Hello, and welcome to the Games Monster podcast. My name is David Pstansky, and this is the first podcast on the Games Monster front here in 2021. This actually, I tell a lie there, this is actually take two, because we just had a little technical hitch, so if you were listening live and you think, he just said all this, I do apologise, but we are going to go over everything again, because this is the Gamer's Guide to Lockdown. What games you should be playing to get you through lockdown. So, if you haven't done so already, please click subscribe on whichever platform you're listening to the Games Monster podcast on. That may be that you're listening to it in audio form on Google or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or what have you. Or if you're watching a video version of it and you're on youtube.com/extreme improv, do smash that subscribe button there, because the more that it can grow, especially on the YouTube channel, the more we'll be able to do podcasts and all these other great things for you. So, with the plugs out the way, let's get on with the show. So, as I'm sure so many of you will know, and if you're listening to this in the future, it's like, wasn't that a quaint time? Yes, we're in another lockdown. 2021 has continued right where 2020 was leaving us off. So, there's still the COVID-19 situation, but to misquote Winston Churchill, this is perhaps not the end, but it is the beginning of the end. The vaccines are here, they're being rolled out, and soon enough, COVID-19 will be a thing of the past. Shame it couldn't have stayed in 2020 where it belonged, but I'm happy at least that soon enough this will be something that we can all look back on and say, wasn't that a strange period of time? But we still are here and now, and we need to get through lockdown. So whichever country you're in, there's lockdowns happening in different ways, tier systems and all this kind of stuff. But currently in the UK, we're in a national lockdown. And one of the great things to do to keep us busy, keep our minds active, to keep us sane, is to play video games. It's fun. It keeps us basically safe. It keeps us indoors. And of course, we will go over like handheld games and like some things for mobile phones as well. So of course you could play those anywhere. But generally speaking, as an activity, watching Netflix, playing video games, this is what lockdown was built for. So I would say you need a variety of games. And the reason I say you need a variety of games for lockdown is because it's easy just to get fed up of playing one game and then not come back to it, and then, you know, you'll start to really feel the lockdown blues. But if you have a variety of things to go to, just like I'm sure you might have a favourite TV show, but you might have a few TV shows you watch in a week. You might watch, like, if you watch The Walking Dead, then you might also watch Family Guy, and you don't think, well, I'm watching Family Guy, so I can't watch The Walking Dead until I'm done with it. No, you watch more than one. And I think that's actually something that's really useful for having a enjoyable interest in video games, playing a variety of different things, because it means that you don't get tired of one thing. It means you get to refresh your brain, try something a bit different, and then come back, you know, with a fresh perspective on whatever the challenge or the level that you're currently on the video game you're enjoying. So I would say have a variety of games to play, so that you'll have like main ones that you're really getting into, some palate cleansers, ones just to pick up and play here and there. And so I would say have a few action-adventure games. Certainly, we'll go over some recommendations, regardless of what platform you're on. I'll try to suggest some things for everyone. I don't obviously know all the games, and I haven't played all the games, but this is my recommendations. Or even if it just starts the conversation, gets you thinking about what fits the bill for you, then great, you know. Have a few action-adventure games, perhaps a few first-person shooters or survival horrors. Have one or two, and you'll probably just be stuck with one, but have one RPG on the list. A big RPG that you're like, right, I'm going to get into this RPG, and I'm going to play it along the way. But RPGs, they can be so long, so grindy, that's why it's so important to have some other games along the way when playing an RPG, because otherwise you'll grow tired of it. And if you play an RPG and you get tired of it and you don't come back to it for a few weeks, you'll have forgotten what to do, you'll have forgotten the controls, you'll think, oh, I need to start again, and you'll never ever do it. And trust me, I've been there. I've been 20 hours into an RPG, grown tired of it, given up, decided, oh, well, I do want to see it through, played it a month later, or even 6 months later, and been like, I can't remember the story, I can't remember the controls. So that's why it's good to have an RPG, but then play other things for a couple of hours here or there, or just to play an RPG for an hour or two every day or every couple of days, so that you always keep it warm, keep it familiar, but then play some other things along the way, so that you don't just grow fatigued of the RPG that you're playing. So, some action adventures or first-person shooters, some RPGs, one or two RPGs to have on the playlist, and some arcadey or sports titles, some puzzle games, and then perhaps some online games. Now, some of these games may be online anyway, but now we've said about what kind of things you want on the playlist, let's talk about what ones you should have. Let's start, in fact, with RPGs. So, the big RPG, if you have a PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, of course, I'm going to say this year, if you haven't played it already, get Final Fantasy VII Remake. Get Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's an incredible achievement visually, storyline-wise, direction-wise. The gameplay, the way it's an update but familiar to fans of the original. It's an absolutely spectacular game. I'm still working on it now. It's just an amazing game. If you haven't played the original, I wouldn't necessarily say, well, dive back to the original. I'd say definitely start with the remake, because for modernise, the remake is made for this generation. But if you're interested in Final Fantasy games in general, and you do want to dive back into the past, by all means get a version of Final Fantasy VII, and this is available on pretty much everything. You can get it on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, 2, 1, all of it really. When I say PlayStation 2, you can play PS1 games on PS2 if you're a retro gamer or a collector. But you can get it on Xbox Series X, Series S, Xbox One. You can get Final Fantasy VII. You can download it on the Switch. You can get it for iOS or PC. And the great thing is that they've given all these quality of life improvements so that it's not so grindy, so you can get more into the story and characters without having to have all of the random battles, which, especially for the older graphics, older gameplay, for someone nowadays, they might find hard to dive back into. Or you could just play it as it was originally intended, and it's still great. My recommendation of old Final Fantasy game, though, is always going to be Final Fantasy VIII, just because, and I know it's controversial, but just because the card game that you can play on it, along the main story, Triple Triad, I think was so fun. And I literally, back in the day, 20 odd years ago, I played all the way through Final Fantasy VIII just so I could keep playing the card game against any characters that I could find who would play the card game on the game. It was great. It was a great game. So they're my recommendations. And Final Fantasy VIII, again, is available on pretty much everything as a download, so do check that out. If you don't have a PS4 and you don't want to play the old retro things, if you have a Switch, I'd say do check out Xenoblade Chronicles, either the remake of the first game or Xenoblade Chronicles 2. If you've played them both, you've got a Switch, try and track down a Wii U and play Xenoblade Chronicles X just to continue the glory of that franchise there. Although X is obviously a bit more mech-based, but if not, Octopath Traveler on the Switch is from Square. There's obviously Dragon Quest games. If you've, regardless of which platform, and of course I haven't mentioned the Xbox yet, but you can get things like The Witcher 3, you can get Skyrim. I'm trying to think, I'm trying to think what you can get on the Xbox, anything specific to the Xbox. Of course, there's things like now, just having a quick look here, Cyberpunk 2077, although that may be the game no one wants to talk about, and if you're listening to this in the future, just look up about the launch of Cyberpunk 2077. But obviously that's action-based, but it has RPG elements to it, but it's obviously not an RPG in the same sense as Final Fantasy. But get an RPG. Skyrim, if you haven't played it. The Witcher 3, get something like this. Dark Souls. I'm trying to think what else. Get an RPG. Get perhaps 2 RPGs, just so that you can dip back and forth into an RPG whilst playing other things. For me, though, my main thought for games to get me through lockdown are going to be action-adventure games. And so for me, this is going to be, personally for me, I've just got for Christmas a copy of The Last of Us 2, which I'm super excited to be diving into. And if you haven't played the original Last of Us, then again, that's high on the recommendation list for either PS4 or PS3. And of course, you can play PS4 games on the PS5. So I would say definitely check out the Last of Us franchise. The Resident Evil remakes, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3 remake. A lot of people perhaps weren't big fans of Resident Evil 3 remake. But and I've defended it here on the podcast before, but let me just defend it a tiny bit more. If you liked Resident Evil 2 remake, and it's a fantastic game, it's not the shortest game in the Resident Evil series, and it's not the shortest action-adventure game. To see all it's got to offer of the 2 characters and the versions of their story that you can go through, you're looking at 15, 20 plus hours first time through to play through all the different characters. Resident Evil 3 is more of the same, except for you can complete it in about 6 or 7 hours. And I think that upset a lot of people, and that's why some of the reviews weren't as favourable about it. But for me, it's the perfect length for an action game, because it's the difficulty curve on it. It builds at a nice pace on Resident Evil 3. It's not that you're going through the early stages for ages and then find it's getting super hard and then you'll just think, oh my god, I just want to get through to the end. It's got a good pace to it, it's got a good length to it, and it's short enough that because of the way the bonuses in the game are set up, where you can upgrade weapons and play again and still have the upgrades. This is no spoiler. Loads of games work like this, and especially Resident Evil games. It just encourages you to think, well, I've got through that, now I want to play it again, but this time I'm going to be ready for the zombies, and I'm going to be even more powerful. And then once you've done it again, I don't know how many times I've played Resident Evil 3 during the lockdowns in last year, but I've played through it enough times so now I can whip through it in about 3 hours or less. And I truthfully haven't got bored of it. I played it to death when it first came out, but then a few months later, and about a month ago as it is now, I played through it again, and it was like, yeah, this was great. So Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 3, I would definitely say to get on to the playlist if you're into those type of games. And if not, then the Tomb Raider games are great action adventures that I would say to get. The Uncharted games on the PS4 if you haven't played those. Cyberpunk 2077. Of course, there's loads and loads of great games. So whatever platform you're on, and of course, say action adventures. Of course, there's all of the first-person shooters, which obviously they're their own thing. But if you want a single-player game, then do check out like Call of Duty. Check out any of the Halos if you've got Xbox. You could get through all of whatever lockdown by getting an Xbox One or an Xbox Series X or S or whatever you can get, and getting the Master Chief Collection, getting Halo 5, and just thinking, right, I'm going to have a marathon of those. But of course, once again, you don't want to just be stuck with one franchise or one game, because you will get tired and you'll probably find that you're not enjoying the gaming as much. And having a variety of games is the key to enjoying gaming as a way to get through a lockdown. Doom Eternal, that came out within the last year, and recently came out on the Switch. These are great games, great high adrenaline, fast-paced, first-person shooter games. So if that's your thing, then I would definitely recommend Doom Eternal if you haven't played it, or go back and get the original Doom. And when I say the original Doom, I mean Doom 2016, or was it 2018? I believe it's 2016. And yes, it was in fact. And if you really love the Dooms and you want a few classic recommendations, then of course Doom, Doom 2, Final Doom, they're all great. There's been versions of Duke Nukem 3D and things like this that you can go to any eShop or like PlayStation Network store or Xbox One store, Xbox One, or just the Xbox store, whatever, and you can get tons of like classic games to bridge these gaps. Like, we're now in a situation where I don't think anyone could ever say, oh my gosh, there's nothing for me to play, because on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series systems, you can get all of the games that came out on the last generation. You can get like PlayStation Now, you can get Xbox Game Pass. There are hundreds of games. There are so many games. Sea of Thieves on the Xbox is highly recommended. Game from Rareware, and so get that on the list. Check out if it's going to be quite your bag, but that's a great game there. So anything RPG, action, adventure, things that you can play with others as well, that's very important. If you don't have people to play with and you're on social media, and most people are, especially if you're listening to this podcast, you're a gamer, I'd be surprised if you're not on social media. And if you're not, then just create a fake account so you're anonymous, and that way you can just look things up. And find a group. There are communities on Facebook groups for pretty much any online game or any game in general, and you can find people to play games with. So if you don't have like a big friends list, you can find people to play Call of Duty with, and you can find people to play Among Us with. Among Us is a game that's been out a while, but it's completely exploded just because of the style of game it is, the fact that it's about social deduction, working out who is the imposter and everything. So Among Us, I would say, is an essential lockdown game as well. So action adventures, RPGs, get some online games, certainly. And most games, I say most games, an awful lot of games nowadays have online functionality so that you can play with people. So if you want to play with others, loads and loads of games do offer it. What else to say? Recommendations, I'm just talking off the top of my head. God of War on the PlayStation 4 and 5, obviously, do get that. And then you probably want something a bit more light-hearted, and this is where the Switch comes in. And of course you can get light-hearted games. You can get Crash Bandicoot, Crash 4, It's About Time, or is on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox machine, so you can get it there. It's not on the Switch as of yet, but it might do in the future. But if you like Crash Bandicoot, then you can get the Crash Team Racing, Crash Nitro-fueled racing games. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, of course, if you at home and you can want to build an obstacle course, then if you are able to get Mario Kart Live. I haven't got that myself, but just the idea of being able to have Mario Kart in your house, it seems a perfect idea for lockdown, but my house perhaps isn't best suited to build an obstacle course. So do look around your property and think, right, do I have a dog that's just going to pounce on Mario? Are there things, is there a little kid running around where this isn't actually practical? I've got just a tiny room, I'm in a flat share or whatever. Work out if it's a viable option for you. But for other like fun, light-hearted games, of course, Super Mario Odyssey on the Switch, Super Mario 35th Anniversary Collection. Get that, because it's only going to be available for a little while longer. But get that, because it's got Super Mario 64, the game that really started the 3D games revolution, and the first really big and successful and perfected it first go 3D platformer. Its follow-ups, Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy on there. If you do have a Wii or Wii U, by all means get Super Mario Galaxy 2, because it's better than Super Mario Galaxy in so many ways. Such a good game. So get that. And what else? On the Switch, I didn't mention, obviously you need to get Zelda Breath of the Wild. If you want an action-y game, obviously you could get the recent Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which is really good. If you've played Breath of the Wild, don't quite expect Age of Calamity to be the same game. It's not Breath of the Wild 2, which is actually due to come out. Age of Calamity looks exactly like Breath of the Wild, just from like a screenshot of it, but the gameplay is really fast, arcadey, warrior-style gameplay, so you'll just bash some buttons and destroy hundreds of mogoblins, I forget the names, and like the baddies on it all in one go. So it's not the exact same type of game, but it is still a very good game, and it actually fills in the story, the backstory to Breath of the Wild. So if you're a general Zelda fan, definitely check that out. And of course, if you want more retro style Zelda on the Switch, then you can get Link's Awakening remake, which is very good. Switch this here. Hello, hello, hello. I don't know if the sound was good or bad or what just happened there, but it looks like the audio hasn't been working. So hello, hello. There might be an echo. I'm just checking this. I'm going to power through to the end because I'm almost on there. Make sure you get some puzzle games, and when I say puzzle games, I do apologise if the audio's gone. I don't know if you lost hearing me for the last few minutes because it looked like the microphone was working, but now I've switched to this mic, it looks like it is working, so I apologise there. If it went dead, I'll investigate, but I'll investigate that in time for another podcast. But puzzle games, I was going on about getting Zelda Age of Calamity and Crash about time, and Breath of the Wild if you've recently got a Switch. If you've just got a Switch, then that will get you through lockdown in itself. But Pokemon Sword and Shield are great ones to get also, and puzzle games though, so something like Tetris 99 on the Switch or the Tetris Effect on PlayStation 4, Xbox Series, PlayStation 5, anything where you can play the Tetris Effect is a brilliant version of that. If you're on a mobile, then yeah, you can get Tetris on there, but you probably want something like Candy Crush Saga, or if you haven't played it, Lily's Garden. There's just ones where you can just play them for a few minutes, then forget about them, rage quit midway through, and it doesn't matter. Be like, oh, it suddenly says that I've got to wait an hour for the lives to regenerate. Games like that are good just for passing a little bit of time, and I would highly recommend that you get something on the list like that. And whatever you do, just make sure you get variety. But the last thing I will say is this is also an opportunity to get into playing some games that perhaps you wouldn't have thought of, maybe importing some games. Now, most machines now are region free, and you can get some import games, and most games do come out in most places. You probably find some Japanese games that don't ever get a Western release, but nothing actually pops to the top of my head for Switch or PlayStation 4 or 5 at the moment. For what I need to say are the import games you need to get there. But certainly, if you look at retro consoles, there are so many like great games. Like during lockdown, I got a cartridge so that I could play import games on my Sega Saturn, and I was enjoying All Japan Pro Wrestling featuring Virtua. I do have a copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga, but it's the Japanese copy, Panzer Dragoon Azul, as it's pronounced, or as it's written. I don't know if that's actually how it's pronounced. But do make sure you consider, like, okay, this is the time where I might be getting into video game collecting, or just experiencing stuff where it's not all about, okay, Xbox Series X is out, PlayStation 5's out. If you didn't get one of them, just don't think, well, I'm late to the party and I can't join in. There's going to be a bunch of other old games that you can play. You can try out some older. So like, something on the PlayStation 1, we got Parasite Eve 2, but we never got Parasite Eve in the UK. So that was something on my 2 playlist. I do have it, but it's like, okay, so this is the opportunity to go back and play that. Look at like any other retro consoles you may want to collect for. One thing that's great nowadays is that you can get the mini consoles of things. So you could get like a mini Super Nintendo, a mini Nintendo, the mini Sega Mega Drive or Genesis. The PC Engine is one I got during lockdown, which is just loads of fun. Something like Newtopia on it is great. And if you haven't played that one, that's like a Zelda, like a retro Zelda 1 style adventure. So imagine something in between Zelda 1 on the NES and A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo, and that gives you a picture of what Newtopia is. And then of course you can get you can get an arcade 1-up machine. Why not? It's lockdown. Just get an arcade 1-up machine, spend an afternoon building it, have your photo with it, play some Street Fighter 2 or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then leave it there for a few months and then put it on eBay, because I think that's what a lot of people do. Or you could get one of these dedicated arcade sticks, which has got hundreds of arcade games built into it. They're a load of fun, and I forget the name of them off the top of my head. So I can't actually tell you what it is to recommend it, but if you just search like Home Arcade or something like this on Amazon, you'll find a load of them. So whatever you're doing, I'm going to wrap this up now. Just again, and I apologise that there's been a couple of technical issues. I did abandon the episode when the technical issue hit the first time. I don't know how long there was a glitch in the middle of this for. I promise you that I'll keep working on it. I was trying to monitor it, but then as I got into talking about things, then I lost my way slightly. But also dig out from your cupboards, ask your older siblings. They might have like a Game Boy Advance or an original Game Boy locked away somewhere. You could get into playing it, play the original Pokemon Red or Blue, or Green, I suppose. That's a Japanese import. If you had a Game Boy Advance, then you could play Fire Red or Leaf Green. But just whatever you do, play some games, play a variety of games, and that is the key. Just because it's just like I said, you won't just watch one TV show. You won't just watch The Walking Dead and watch nothing else in the week until The Walking Dead's back on. You watch The Walking Dead, then you think, oh wow, Family Guy's on, or you might be like, I'm going to put a movie on. You want a variety because it just keeps things interesting. An RPG is great because you can keep coming back to it a couple of hours each day, or an hour each day, or half an hour, or play it for 5 hours one day and then don't play it for a week. But don't just think, oh, I can't be bothered to play that 5 hours just to get up one level in a game and then not play games, because that won't get you through lockdown. But playing a game for an hour, then having like the next day where you play like The Last of Us, or sports game, FIFA or WWE Battlegrounds or whatever, then something like that, a few rounds of Among Us or Call of Duty, this is going to get you through the lockdown, guys. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure you have fun, stay safe, wear a mask, don't go out. That's the whole point. So if you're not supposed to go out, don't go out. Just use the time to catch up on those box sets on Netflix, or use this time to play these games that you hadn't played before. There's never been a better time to give yourself permission just to catch up on some of these entertainment content, games, movies, books, anything like this. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I know it was a bit rambly and all that, and I know there was probably a technical issue in the middle, and I do apologise if the audio quality is significantly lower now or poor. But we've got through this, and we'll make it better for next time. Please don't give up on the Games Monster podcast just because of a technical error. Because I'm not gonna give up, and I'm gonna keep making sure we're doing loads more podcasts this year than we did last year. And we have loads of podcasts. If you haven't checked them out, check out the Mega Movie podcast. Yesterday I was reviewing the most recent episode of Doctor Who, the Revolution of the Daleks. Do check out any of the Extreme Improv shows. We've got Revenge of the Mafia starting this Friday at 8 PM UK time on the Extreme Improv YouTube channel. Do smash that subscribe button on youtube.com/Extreme Improv. That would be brilliant. And from me, David Postansky, on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Give me a like there. But until next time, stay safe, stay gaming, and stay extremed. Right. Bye, everyone.